So Netflix is now back with its third installment of Joe Berlinger's Conversations with a Killer. And this time we're talking about one that has always avoided me. We're going to get into Conversations with a Killer, the Jeffrey Dahmer tapes. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel today for another review. And today we're going to be reviewing the docuseries Conversations with a Killer, the Jeffrey Dahmer tapes, which is coming to Netflix October 7th. Now, yes, I know there is a Jeffrey Dahmer series available on Netflix now that is like 10 episodes, about an hour each. This is now a docuseries. This has 3 episodes, an hour each, and this is the real deal. Speaking of real deal, in these tapes, we're going to hear some never heard or released audio of Jeffrey Dahmer during his interrogation with his therapist in there. And with that, it's really chilling. It brings the authenticity to it. And by all means, like, you're going to watch this and you're going to just kind of be, I don't know, your jaw's going to drop based on some of the moments, some of the revelations throughout all of this. But what I will say is that Jeffrey Dahmer has been one of those serial killers that has always escaped me. For whatever reason, and I love true crime, I love podcast series, documentaries, I love murder mystery, and for whatever reason, this was one person, one individual that I just never really, for whatever reason, just always avoided me. I never really got into his story. I knew he was amongst one of the highest, he had one of the most highest death kill rates of all serial killers. Had, I think, at a point he was, you know, as far as American serial killers, he was like 4th or 5th on the list. So like at some point, you know, I was like, I kind of get into his story. But hell, with so much content coming out about him now, it was no choice. So checking this out, this was a very interesting story. I think that the more and more we learned about this individual, the more and more I think just how scary it is out there. I mean, this was taking place from, you know, and he had a couple of years. I mean, his first kill was in 1978, and then he waited, I think, like 9 years. About 9 years, because in 1987 or 88 is when he ended up living with his grandmother, and then he performed his next kill from 90, and then from 88 to like 91, he went on a spree. And Jeffrey Dahmer was gay. And what was scary about this is that he targeted men, and it was already scary for gay individuals during these times in the first place. But now you're talking about a serial killer who wants you to basically be submissive to him. And that was his whole motive. Is like, he had this abandonment issue where he wanted his victims to never leave him. So he was doing whatever he could to do so. If that meant killing you and basically making your body lifeless and just rendering you either helpless to any bit of whatever he wants to do, then so be it. And I mean, he's done horrendous things. I mean, there's one particular individual, his youngest victim, and what he did is completely utterly evil. It's just completely evil. And you know, all these individuals were missing, and you know, to kind of set the table here, you know, he targeted gay men. During this time is when AIDS really got on the scene, which, you know, they used to say AIDS was the gay disease, and drugs were at a high, and folks were missing, and people were just assuming they were missing for other reasons, not knowing that in this Ohio area and even in Milwaukee, he was out here targeting folks at bus stops, at clubs, wherever it may be, and they were going missing because he was the reason. A normal looking guy that was just in this community, one person after another. And I mean, he did some horrendous things, and he really, in these tapes, as you hear from him, he can actually recount all of these events with the utmost clarity. He knew exactly what he was doing. And sure, you know, there's a whole idea of him pleading insanity, but like, listen back to these tapes and just almost the lack of remorse, but yet just how to the point, just how smart he was about what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. He recounted all the events, his strategy, his planning, and all sorts of different things. It was chilling. It was definitely chilling. And Joe does a fantastic job. He did the Ted Bundy tapes. He did the John Wayne Gacy tapes. So I was definitely interested to seeing what he was going to do with Jeffrey. And with that, I mean, we really get up close and personal with him, from testimonies from a lot of people that was involved. Hearing from him makes it even real. I mean, and when we talk to these people, so many years later, as they reflect back into these moments and just seeing how this completely changed their lives, their community, and so on. It's just crazy. This guy is nothing but pure evil, and he affected so many. And this is really a lot to consider in all of these things. I think even looking at the African American community, just how they had to endure this in a different light, because there was moments where Jeffrey could have been stopped, but because the cops didn't want to believe black people, which is just a crazy narrative to have here, but it is very much documented in this, where folks were saying like, hey, there is a naked kid that is bleeding that came out of this apartment. You need to come do something. And Jeffrey comes in and just like, hey, that's I don't know if you say it was my nephew or the person that was my uncle. I don't know what it was. And they just let him go. But the person was clearly a victim of his, a sex slave essentially. And, for one thing after the next, it's just like this guy, Jeffrey, just kept getting by just under the radar, and just seeing how these events and how he recounts these events, and how if just one person just would have had a little bit more wherewithal in terms of what happened, it would have changed everything. Even the cops that was initially convicted for wrongdoing about this, and y'all should already know how this went, and then they end up overturning it. I mean, like, it's crazy. There's a lot of events that happen in this documentary that are going to be mind-blowing. For 3 episodes, three hours total, you're gonna go on a ride of seeing from pictures of his apartment, his voice, recounting all of these events, a freezer full of human skulls and bones, and then like the remains all over the property, and him just completely confessing to all 16 murders. He's just like, yeah, it is what it is. And he just did not, I don't know, he had no remorse. And he just completely decimated this community, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And I think the only sad thing really about this is that if there was just more time with Jeffrey to kind of understand what makes somebody operate the way he did, because that was his whole thing. Jeffrey wanted to understand why was he the way he was, and I think that was very important for us to kind of study going forward. But obviously his time was cut short for, you'll see, but like, that's the only thing I was hoping that, we would have got a little bit more into. And I don't think we covered that at all in this document. All we covered was just how it seems like he just kept getting by. The community failed. The community failed itself. Law enforcement and all, letting this serial killer get by and do what he does. There was not enough protection, help into the LGBTQ plus community, the African American community. It just was this normal looking guy that was not normal, that was out here creating terror, and he just was able to do it for so long until he eventually wasn't. And it's just sad. And I think that's the biggest thing I got from this documentary, is that if just one thing would have been different, none of this other stuff would have happened. And it was let me just say this, there was a moment where he was pulled over with a body in the back seat and they just let him go. If he would have been searched, it would have changed everything. And of course it did. And it was just that. There was the next thing. And there was the next thing. And it just was just crazy how he was able to get by for so long. So I don't think there's no happy ending to this story. But it does shed light into one of the most notable serial killers of American history. And they did a really good job in this documentary. And then having never heard before audio, and this really just brings the authenticity to it that keeps you invested the entire time. So hey, check out Conversations with a Killer, the Jeffrey Dahmer tapes, available on Netflix October 7th. Jump in the comments and let me know your thoughts about it, and as always, stay tuned for more reviews very soon.